There are shouts, people laughing, tears of joy for the fair. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. It should have been a happy time for everyone, at least. In the White City, there had arrived a devil known as Henry Howard Holmes. Born in Gilmington, New Hampshire, young H. Holmes lived his childhood here as Herman Webster Mudgett. Holmes was bullied by his classmates out of jealousy they held against him for being intelligent. Although one of the bullying gets transformed to his future self. His classmates one day decided to lock him in the doctor's office with a skeleton they all found terrifying. This had the opposite effect. He as well was terrified of the skeleton, but found it alluring. Herman later on was fascinated by death after the incident. He traveled to the forest to find animals there. Herman started to dissect animals. He dissected both dead and alive animals as a hobby. The hobby later on would become more of a passion. His parents were extremely religious. They held no tolerance for disobedient children. His siblings and him were supposed to obey their parents. Herman's father, an alcoholic, abused Herman, turning him into a sociopath in the future as a result. In the year 1878, Herman is now 17 years old. He kills one of his first victims, a classmate, killing him by overdose, and collecting the insurance money right after. He then meets and marries a young woman named Clara Lovering. They had a son in 1880. Herman uses Clara for the inheritance she's known to have. With her money, he goes to Michigan University. Herman started to develop his skills on dissection. At the time he was in the university, he stole corpses and disfigured them. After disfiguring them, he would have a person recognize the body for him and share the insurance money they claimed. Herman started to have problems at home with his wife and left his wife and son. Herman changed his name to Henry Howard Holmes after he left his family. Herman, now Holmes, moves to Chicago and gets a job at a pharmacy. The owner of the pharmacy dies and leaves his wife with the place. Holmes convinces her to sell the place to him because it would burden her. She accepts and mysteriously disappears right after. Holmes told those close to her that she went off, but she never heard from them again. Holmes decided to build a hotel. It would be known as the World's Fair Castle. Others would just simply know it as the Murder Castle. It was a trap for those clients going to the hotel. Some clients would walk out without a care in the world, while others would never step out of the hotel ever again. At the choice to build his own castle, Holmes designed it himself. Holmes himself would be the architect of building the hotel. He was the only one with the knowledge of the blueprints. He hired architects to help with the construction of his 3-story building. He fired them after they helped him with a certain part of his hotel. He kept the plans to himself. The layout of the hotel was uniquely strange to the architects. The building itself had rooms without windows, staircases that led to nowhere, and odd-shaped hallways. Holmes had created a labyrinth in his hotel that only he would be able to get out of. After the discovery of Holmes' case with the Peitzel children, the police in Chicago started investigating the hotel. They interviewed employees from the hotel and found one statement to be strange. Pat Quillan, the hotel janitor, told the police that he wasn't allowed to clean the second floor. The police were suspicious and led to investigate the castle for a whole month. They found Holmes' secret passages to the top floors and torture rooms. They found the basement to have a pile of bones and teeth, along with a table with dry blood and a dress stained with blood from Holmes' victims. The police helped with the Peitzel children's case with the evidence to prove that Holmes was guilty. They believed H. Holmes was responsible for over 200 people's deaths, but they weren't able to prove it. The Columbian Exposition was an event to celebrate. People all across the nation went to Chicago for the fair. So many people came to Chicago, but many disappeared. The fair was expected to have 7 million people arrive. When the hotel was finished being constructed, the time for the fair started as well. The hotel was named the World's Fair Hotel. Since it was close to the fair, it attracted many visitors. Holmes would usually go to the fair to invite mostly women, and particularly blonde and blue-eyed. His other victims included men and children. You could describe him to be manipulative and a very convincing man. He had a skill to easily gain people's trust, and in the eyes of women, he was handsome. Holmes used his looks to get women to go to his castle. When his targets from the fair accepted Holmes' invitation to the hotel, they were sent to special rooms that Holmes chose for each victim. It was the same situation with the employees in the hotel. Holmes employed those who were in desperate need of a job. He made sure that his employees take their life insurance with him, and they were witness noticing that many people working in the hotel would disappear suddenly. Holmes would kill his workers to benefit from their insurance money and to gain a feel of success from his murderous passion. Benjamin F. Peitzel was the father of Alice, Nellie, Howard, and Desi Peitzel. His wife Carrie Peitzel and their new baby altogether made up the Peitzel family. Holmes had promised the Peitzel family a high reward of $10,000 for faking Benjamin Peitzel's death. Benjamin and a shady attorney gladly agreed and joined in on the scam. What had been the original plan was to change Benjamin's identity. His new name would become B.F. Perry, an inventor that would get killed and disfigured in a lab explosion. Holmes would then find a corpse that looks like Benjamin to represent B.F. Perry's dead body and disfigure it and burn it. The body would then be placed in the scene that Holmes would set up. B.F. Perry on the floor with a disfigured face, broken glass, and flammable chemicals, or on the floor to make the accident look real. Or at least that's what Benjamin believed the plan was. Instead, Holmes switched the deal without telling a soul. There was no fake corpse. The corpse H.H. Holmes used in the scene was actually Benjamin himself. Benjamin's wife and children were led to believe their father was still alive but hiding in South America. The family then asked to be taken to where Benjamin had gone, so Holmes decided to take 3 of the Peitzel children with him. Holmes had collected his fair share of the scam and left the 3 Peitzel children, whom never reunited with their dad nor returned home. The man responsible for the end of Holmes' dark and successful murders was a man that goes by the name of Frank Geyer. He was a detective from Philadelphia and part of the Pinkerton Detective Agency. Geyer was put in charge of the Holmes Peitzel case, and Geyer's main goal was to find out the truth behind the disappearance of the 3 Peitzel children. Geyer had already suspected of Holmes due to the many insurance frauds Holmes had committed and gotten away with. If Holmes was capable of that, murder was no exception. And with Geyer as the head of the Holmes Peitzel case, he was determined to prove Holmes guilty once and for all. The investigation began when Geyer decided to follow in Holmes' shadow and retrace Holmes' footsteps from Holmes' trip to Toronto in the Midwest, which had been around the same time the Peitzel children had disappeared. In Toronto, the Pinkerton detectives searched for a whole 8 days before finding a cottage at 16 Vincent Street that was currently being rented by Holmes. Neighbors and witnesses revealed to the Pinkerton Voice that they had seen Holmes travel with 2 little girls. Further questioning from the Pinkerton boys led a neighbor to reveal that he once had allowed Holmes to borrow one of his shovels and that he used it to dig something very deep underground, but that he hadn't seen what it was that Holmes had buried. Geyer then asked the neighbor for the exact same shovel and with the neighbor's help found the exact spot where Holmes' digging had occurred. After digging several feet underground, Geyer discovered the 2 bodies that belonged to Nellie and Alice Peitzel. Geyer, urged to find Howard Peitzel, the last of the Peitzel children, decided to visit a house Holmes had rented in Irvington, Indianapolis. The man who had rented Holmes the house told Geyer about seeing Holmes with a small boy. Geyer believed Holmes might have also buried the body like he had done with Nellie and Alice Peitzel, and dug up spots of disturbed-looking ground around the perimeter of the house. Geyer, while looking inside the house, found a small fragment of a bone in the fireplace. After cleaning and searching more of the fireplace, teeth and a part of a jaw, which looked to belong to a small boy, were found. All the way at the bottom of the fireplace, a portion of a stomach, spleen, and a liver were also found. The investigation's conclusions led the detectives to believe that Howard Peitzel had been drugged and butchered by no other than H.H. Holmes. The discovery of all of the Peitzel children urged Geyer to pay a visit to the Holmes Hotel in Chicago. There he found piles of unsent letters written by the Peitzel children. The frightening discoveries of the investigation had now sealed Holmes' fate: death. Holmes later on appealed his case at court against his accusation of murdering Benjamin Peitzel, but lost. His last day was spent in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, May 7, 1896, where he was hanged for the murder of Benjamin Peitzel and the 3 Peitzel children. It took 15 minutes to declare Holmes officially dead. H.H. Holmes had an enormous impact on Chicago society, its safety, and on the police departments of Chicago at the time. H.H. Holmes introduced policemen and investigators, such as Frank Geyer, to their first ever serial killer. In Chicago society, to his limitless murders, by murdering most of the Peitzel family, 3 of them being kids, and even using the World's Fair to his advantage for him to find new victims to bring into his house of no escape, or just to make them completely disappear to his advantage and reward of insurance money. With 27 million visitors attending the fair, Holmes was at advantage and got away with several more murders than the only 27 that he claims to have been responsible for. Chicago's discovery of what lays beyond the walls of the murder hotel had left policemen and Chicago citizens frozen in fear even after the death of H. Holmes.